Hello, my name is Irene Kiwia, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Fintech TV Africa, where we feature insights and trends and innovations on fintech and institutions championing social impact for change. Karibu. The world is battling with a plastic waste management issue for over decades. Plastic has not only polluted our lands, but also our waters. The United Nations estimates that unless dumping stops, by 2050, there will be more plastic in the sea than fish. The world is also battling with plastic fishing nets abandoned by fishermen, which is estimated to amount to 640,000 tons. This is 10% of all plastic found in the waters. To give us more on this story is our correspondent, Leah Ngari.
Well, thank you, Irene. You know, out of all the plastics that have ever been produced, 60% have gone into waste, begging the question of how many have been recycled so far. And this will be part of our conversation today as we talk to the PETCO country manager right here in Kenya, Joyce Gashuhi, to give us an outlook on the situation in Kenya, the African continent, and of course, placing some bit of extension of the conversation into the global scene. Joyce Gashugi is the country manager right here in Kenya for PETCO, a company incorporated in 2018 to represent the Kenya PET plastic industry's joint effort to self-regulate post-consumer PET recycling. Now, PETCO's unique model is built on the simple principle of an industry-driven and financed environmental solution for post-consumer PET plastic. The PET plastic industry, as we know, acknowledges that the convenience and life-saving qualities of plastics aside, a solution for post-consumer plastic packaging is critical in order to minimize its impact on the environment. And with us, as I've mentioned, Joyce Gashugi will give us more insight. Joyce, you've been working with PETCO for quite a bit. Tell us the status right now, mentioning that 20 to 30% of the plastics still in use until this moment globally. What does this mean?
Thank you very much. I think plastics are a part and parcel of our lives. That's what that means. They're not about to go anywhere anytime soon. I think what is disturbing is the statistic you've given around recycling, that only 10% ended up in recycling. But I think that is changing and changing very quickly, largely because globally there's a push to increase recycling rates. There's also a push to reduce plastic pollution. I think everybody, myself, yourself included, has been able to see the emotive graphic images of fish or whales or turtles, you know, marine life that is afflicted by plastic pollution. And I think we all agree nobody wants that to happen.
I know you've mentioned just now that plastics are not about to go anywhere. They're here with us. And looking at the figures that I mentioned, you're basically saying plastics are essential to humans. But then again, the recycling, as you've mentioned, is not up to par with what should be there. And then again, there's the whole environmental aspect of plastic waste. Then where are we headed if then we're still producing but not able to adequately dispose of the waste?
I think if we look at, so this discussion needs to be had in different ways. So if we look at recycling in the European context, in the Japanese context, recycling is happening almost at 80% and 70% recycling rates, which means for every 10 bottles you put out, 7 to 8 of them are being recycled, which is very good. This is not perfect, but it's very good. If you come to Africa, we are a growing population, newly industrializing, which means our demand for consumption is also going up. What that means is our demand for product and product that is packaged specifically, usually, of course, with plastic, simply because it's the most versatile, it's easy to transport, and the cost of distribution is much cheaper, then becomes a reality. I think in the case of Kenya, the rate of recycling has been going up. For the last 2 years since our inception as PETCO, we've seen recycling of PET, your water bottles, your soda bottles, your milk bottles, your cooking oil bottles, go up by about 36%, up from the 10% you mentioned earlier. And to date, we've recycled over 500 million bottles of water, soda, juice, etc. So it's not a small feat. Could it get better? Yes. But as part of our own strategic plan as a company is that by 2030, we hope to have this recycling rate up to 70%.
And even as we talk about Kenya, and you've mentioned also the African region, let's zero in on Kenya a little bit. I know, statistics talking about the fact that about 20,000 tons of PET plastic waste is created in the country each year. And for the year 2019, PETCO Kenya, of which you are one of the managers there, planned to recycle 6,000 tons of plastic. But the question is, how feasible is this?
So it's very feasible. When we started, it was quite, it appeared to be a daunting task. You have to remember when we came, the background was that the country was only doing about 900 tons a year. So when we came and we put together our strategic plan and we said in 2019 we're going to do 6,000 metric tons, it felt ambitious. And so for us, through our model, we were able to put in a subsidy into the market. And the subsidy is of monetary value. So collectors were very encouraged to collect. So it stimulated the market so well that we not only surpassed the 6,000, we were able to recycle 7,700 metric tons. So we already went above and beyond what we had targeted. And this year, despite COVID-19, most companies have not been able to meet their targets. We are actually going to surpass what we did last year. So we're looking to do about 8,500 metric tons this year, which is slightly close to almost 450 million bottles recycled this year.
Well, that's all with us right here in studio. On this other end, I'll take it back to you, Irene.
Protecting our environment is not a continental issue, but a global issue. Recently, a summit was held in the United States which focused on a cleaner and safer environment. Let's go to the founder and CEO of Fintech TV to tell us more. Vince, it looks like an amazing, great panel of speakers.
Thanks, Irene. It was an amazing group. We wrapped up the Nest Summit at Climate Week New York City at the iconic Javits Center in New York City and broadcast globally in a virtual format for the first time to stakeholders, interested parties to educate and create awareness around all the issues that we care about. My co-hosts Kavita Gupta, Jeff Gitterman, and Patricia Wu talked with experts, activists, business leaders who are all making an impact to protect the environment and fight climate change. Take a look.
Thank you so much, Vince. We are so excited to launch Fintech TV here in Africa and being part of this amazing network. Now, Africa is one of the continents that is championing the total ban on production and use of plastic bags. Out of the 25 countries that has done so in the last 4 years include Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Niger, and Mauritania, to name just a few. Here's an exciting story by an entrepreneur championing plastic recycling, Mr. Kieran Smith.
Well, thank you so much, Irene. Indeed, interesting statistics that you have highlighted there. I mean, I must add that considering that the global recycling rate is at less than 10%, this is definitely of great concern, Irene. And to discuss this and among other issues, we have with me in studio the CEO of Mr. Green Africa, that's Kieran Smith, to help us understand this matter further. Mr. Kieran Smith, who is the CEO of Mr. Green Kenya. Just a little bit about Green Kenya. It is a plastic recycling company that incentivizes marginalized waste pickers and base of the pyramid stakeholders by offering premium prices and added benefits to provide a continuous supply of valuable recyclables, which in turn create pathways out of poverty for them, while simultaneously creating a positive environmental impact. Now, I will allow him to tell us a little bit more about himself without saying too much about him. Mr. Smith, you're doing such a great job. I mean, everything environment right now is very important, keeping the environment conducive for everyone, and of course, promoting and protecting everything that makes the environment. But before we go into the questions and just hearing more about what you have been working on, tell us a little bit about who Smith is.
Well, okay, I'm a human being. Let's start with that. Well, okay, so my background is I started my career in banking, and of course, when you're in banking in a very big operator system that is really quickly expanding and also has its challenges, I realized I really want to create more impact around me and in my environment. So when I led and came to the idea of creating Mr. Green Africa in a context that combines the social and the environmental impact while having economically a sustainable business approach, was really the pathway for me personally to engage into this sort of very fast growing sector, because I think fundamentally corporate world is also realizing that the capitalistic thinking and system, the way we used to, is old-fashioned, and it's becomes much more critical now to think inclusively and from a social perspective and from an environmental perspective.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the fact that we have about 359 metric tons of plastic being produced, 14 to 18% of it said to be the only percentage that is recycled. What does this mean?
I mean, I think we have to fact check real quick on the number. So from what I know is we have roughly 100 million metric tons a year being produced in plastics globally, yeah? And I think when you look at the recycled and how much is being recycled, it's very low, and I don't know exactly the percentages. But for sure, what we have to look at is the reason why we're in such a place is because of the design of how the plastic systems or the plastic industry has been designing the life cycle of plastics, from the raw material being extracted, produced and brought into packaging, and then of course after consumption of the content with the packaging being wasted. And that's where we are in a very linear system, and we can see how this is now breaking into a much more circular system where we are much more mindful about the resources that we're using and really thinking end of life packaging. And so through that, if this is systemically approached, one moves away from this very low percentage of recycling rate that we see today and compared to global scale of plastic, to a much more circular system that has a much higher recycling rate. And of course, the definition of recycling will be redefined.
What will it take for a country like Kenya, or basically the African continent, to achieve this? Which stakeholders have to come together in terms of the financial implications? What will it really take for us to get to where you are projecting right now?
Well, yeah, many moving parts, but as you mentioned, the stakeholder collaboration from the point of collection, inclusive the consumer, by the way, and its awareness, all the way sort of to the end market. You know, the application of plastic, where does it end up? Does it end up back in packaging? Is it locally focused? What are the qualities? So there is the multi-stakeholder approach that one needs to take. And then of course, one needs to look at and address investments at the right time. Capacity, what would it take for us to jump from a 5 to 20% recycling rate that we know today, mostly captured by the informal market, and as we say here in Kenya, you know, the Joakali way, to get to a formal system, yeah, and that requires investment. That requires really a strategic plan and alignment amongst these stakeholders. But yeah, definitely capital investment is required to do that and do it on the continent in a nutshell. And of course, I think finally, really transitioning away from a linear system to a circular system.
Having worked, with the Mr. Green Kenya entity, I would be interested to know what technology you have adopted as an institution or organization towards, addressing the plastic pollution menace.
Yeah, well, we started very simple, right? When we started out in 2014, no one was talking about the plastic pollution challenge as we know it today. Yeah, that's one. And also two, no one was talking about circular economy. And when we started out, we knew from the day one that we need to combine a physical value chain with a digital sort of traceability in order for us to, just from a business case point of view, be able to trace what are we buying and what are we transforming and selling back into the market. And so very early on, we tried to sort of leverage sort of existing software technologies and bring them into the context of our new value chain, of our plastic waste value chain. So, for example, Early on, we used digital scales on the ground where we do the purchases with our suppliers, and we started a registration process for these suppliers. And the reason why we did that is not only for us to know who is bringing us what and how much, but also to create a track record for that informal player and person, and formalize them or bringing them a step further to formalization. The moment they have an income track record, they can go out and get loans and become a much more formal player in the entire system. So from a technology point of view, I think data, traceability, and sort of transaction understanding is a very key piece that we have very early on adopted. And of course, now we want to expand that, right? We want to sort of move away from a KG-based incentive system to maybe a unit-based, item-based system, where we can go all the way to the consumer and give one bottle, 1 point to a consumer to engage and be part of that network.
What do you think about environmental education as far as, engaging different, especially the young people, in being pioneers of recycling plastic waste? What would you say, in terms of pursuing environmental education?
Super important, number one. I think goes a long way. If you, again, when I take Europe as a benchmark and an example, the reason why they're successful, quote unquote, in their recycling rates is because they spent a lot of money in awareness creation with the public and drove behavioral change. I think for us, we probably don't have the time to wait that long to have awareness change and behavior change throughout our population and within this generation, and it's something we need to do. So I think environmental education, super important. We probably have to think more innovatively, how do we drive the narrative on environmental education? How can we combine it with a social narrative? How can we combine it with a personal reward narrative that really engages the person, the individual, to actually engage with the solutions that we have at hand? And of course, one thing is the narrative, but the other thing is also making it very convenient, very simple, and accessible for an individual to engage. And if we, I think, do that, the environmental education will benefit and will overarch and create the long-lasting impact that we are looking for.
Beyond that, let's talk about, producer responsibility law. Perhaps this would be the answer towards making sure that the producers bear the burden. Do you think they should bear the burden as far as recycling plastic waste is concerned?
Yeah, no, this is definitely going that direction, also on a global scale. And by the way, the producer responsibility laws, they entail a certain incentive system for, if you're polluting more, you also should be more responsible for bringing it back into a system, right? And if you're polluting but not taking any responsibility on bringing back, you should pay more than the people and the organizations who do, right? And I think that's the framework and the governing element that I see is really can be really effective and facilitating. We should not only rely on that, because in the end, it has to make business sense and there needs to be a demand there. So
should we then introduce taxes, perhaps?
Not necessarily, I cannot give you the silver bullet, There are only lead bullets in this conversation. Making a policy framework and creating standards and having an understanding across the industry with the multi-stakeholder approach is an important part. Government, brands, manufacturers, recyclers, collectors, etc. They all need to have a common understanding, how do we want to do things, right?
As we just come to a close of this conversation, and great insights there that you have about not just Kenya, and I'm assuming also the African continent, of course, can use the same approach. But now to hasten the process of recycling waste in Kenya, and let's talk about the African continent. What do you think it will take for us to achieve at least a considerable development towards recycling waste?
Awareness, policy, investment, and leveraging the newest technologies that are out there to bring here and leapfrog into the sort of the recycling world and do it better. And then for the last one is really the multi-stakeholder approach. If we get those elements together in combination and right, I think we will be able to accelerate and make that happen.
Kiran Smith, CEO of Mr. Green Kenya. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for
and giving
having
us insight on everything environmental. By the way, what do you foresee, say, the next 10 years? As far as recycling waste is concerned, what do you envision for a country like Kenya? What will it look like?
A circular economy, a circular plastics economy that is local, that is inclusive on a social element, environmental, of course. And I think the final part is that it creates income for all the stakeholders in the value chain. So truly with the fair trade approach. Everybody in the circular economy can benefit and has a win. It's not exploitive. That's what I see.
Well, I'll take it back to you, Irene. Let's just hear more from you right now.
Many of the technologies developed around the world will have a huge impact in Africa to fight pollution. Fintech TV co-founder and host Kavira Gupta joins us from India for that part of the story.
Thank you, Irene. Here in India and in Delhi, there are a lot of amazing social entrepreneurs who have made it their life mission to combat some of the world's most critical issues in climate change and pollution. Today, I have Sandeep Patel, who is the CEO and founder of Nepra, a multi-million-dollar leading waste management company in India. He had done his MBA from Lead Business School UK with majors in project management and e-commerce strategy. But he decided to come back to India and start Nepra 12 years back. Today, Nepra has plants in operation in Indore and Ahmedabad with operational capacity of 600 tons, with Pune and Jamnagar getting ready to be started by end of this year. So Sandeep, I'm very excited to have you today. Most of the people who leave India for their education, higher education, and that start working, rarely comes back to India, and especially to come back to India to do something in impact, which traditionally has never been a multi-million-dollar business. So please share with us your journey.
So when I used to look at waste, I used to see a lot of dry waste within it. So if you look at a dump site, what do you see? You either see a plastic, you see cloth, you see paper lying in there, but you don't see the sand or inert, right? It's an eyesore. All the dry waste is an eyesore. So when people don't segregate, the problem is segregation, and the problem is the dry waste for most of the people, because we have composting units and everything. Nobody ever made value chain for dry waste because it's multi-commodity, and multiple value chain management is a big issue. So I always focus on technology from day one. So, I shared the first 2 versions of our software myself within first 3 months of operations. And the third one was something which was much better, which everybody accepted, and we kept on building on that. And today we have a very robust system which allows us to manage our operations and allows us to scale to multi-city as well.
I think this is what I call a real impact business, because it has the deep sense of business of having actually returns and looking at it from a very traditional financial analysis perspective, but also just creating impact naturally and like having a generational impact at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think that's why for me this journey is very exciting. So I've heard this story from Vineet, who came in our first episode, that there was something extremely crazy happened very beginning of your career, which almost took away Nepra. So please tell me more about it.
See, I got the first check from Vineet's fund I got the bank credit on 1st of February, 2013. On 3rd of May, we had a fire. So we had invested a lot of money, which was given into CAPEX, and a lot of material we bought because we realized we are buying machines, so we'll be able to process and do all that stuff. So we bought a lot of material as well because we kept adding more waste pickers and clients and all. And unfortunately, on that fine day, that was windy, and the next door unit spark came and it caught fire.
Oh, wow.
We were shaken up. I had slept at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call at 4 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, there is a fire. I was shaken up. I mean, I was literally shaking. I ran, literally drove at X miles crazy speed to reach to the unit, and I could see the water tank melting in front of me. And that scene I can't, forget for the rest of the day, and everything was burning. So it was a scene which can never be erased from my mind. But I think we were shaken up by the time the fire got dosed after 4-5 hours. The first thing I did was, coordinating on the team's rules, how to really get back on track. Call up Vineet, and Vineet's first reaction was, "Oh, don't worry. It happened when you were small. So focus on how to get back on track." And good that this is the maximum impact it could have on you, because you will have better processes in the future. So that was a reaction that definitely helped me cool down my fears of losing money. No doubt it had a lot of patience post that as well. But at that time, at least on that particular day, it helped. Then my team, the women, we had a lot of women workers working with us, whom we called at 7 o'clock in the morning, not to come to the site because it was all down, burned down. But they still came there, they started crying, they felt shocked, because these were the women who were earlier getting 2,000, 3,000 rupees salaries per month in unorganized sector. And we had employed them with, best package of 12,000 rupees at that time, with all social security and everything. And they felt at home, they felt respected, which even today, many of them are still working with us. So it shows all this journey of 10 years that they have not left us. But most importantly, they all said, "Sir, we will not take salaries for 1 month, but we will clean this up and let's get back on track." So when I asked everybody what we want to do, and everybody was like, let's build it back. So that was something which literally, gave me that courage to work harder on the next day.
So Sandeep, my last question, what's next for NEPRA?
NEPRA will be in at least 25 cities in next 3 to 5 years across country. We want to be compliant to as much sustainable development goals as we can. So we are looking at electric vehicles, we are looking at solar, as well as waste to energy from our own fuel, which we send to cement kilns for burning. So NEPRA is a zero waste to landfill company since last 3 years. And we will continue with our mission on being a zero waste to landfill company and impacting more and more people as we grow.
Very, very fascinating. It's a fascinating journey in last 10 years, what all you have achieved, not just for yourself, but for so many people on the road. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for taking time out today.
Those are incredible insights, Kabira. Thank you. We've come to the end of the show. My name is Irene Kiwia. Thank you for joining us.